Okay, we're back here on side 2 over here, and this is actually the 4th side of the tape series on tape 2, so I hope you're still with us. I was just getting ready to discuss a little bit about some of the problems in Billy's group. Bear in mind that Billy's a farmer, and his friends are all farmers and live in small town areas, and suddenly to find themselves in the middle of contacts from highly evolved beings from another world, obviously they got a little excited. Some of the members were having a lot of difficulty believing what was going on. Much of the information that was coming from Semjase and the other Pleiadians was very disturbing to some of the members of the group. It was very hard for them to throw off years of upbringing and things that they had been taught and suddenly change their minds to another way of thinking. I think the most disturbance was probably caused by much of the information surrounding religion and Jesus and the Talmud and so forth. But there was a lot of information brought to Billy about Jesus Christ and all that. Since there's so much of it, I put it on 2 special tapes that you can listen to in this series, and they're called the Talmud Emmanuel. And the information about Jesus came in many different parts of his experiences. He had some experiences about it when he was young, in his teens, and then on many contacts there would be little snippets of information, as well as the uncovering of the book, the Talmud Emmanuel, which was translated out of Aramaic into German. So I've put all that together on 2 tapes, so it's a little bit more coherent, so you can listen to it there. But some of the members in his group were having trouble with that, and it caused problems. Billy took a picture once of several members of the group with the ship floating overhead, and Semjase was very uncomfortable that a couple of these doubters and people who were having problems was in the picture, and so she actually destroyed the pictures with her mind. And she didn't want these pictures out, and she wanted Billy to kind of remove these people from the group before they caused any problems. So already we're having difficulties with Billy and the people around him. While Billy is a very nice, warm, intelligent person who is full of integrity, he's not your leadership type. The two don't seem to go hand in hand. And throughout the whole history of his contacts in the group, he's always had difficulties with, with members. But that's to be expected. There's so much pressure on these people from inside their own ranks, from the outside world, and from these extraterrestrials that obviously there'd be a lot of difficulties springing up. They're no different than just the rest of us. So overall, though, I think they've done a wonderful job of coping with all this stress and pressure from outside influences and trying to keep this information as honest as it is and to try to get it out to the world. So, okay. Semjase also mentioned to Billy that not to be too worried about his acceptance, because Billy was being led to go out and do speeches and talks in public, and he didn't want to do that. He says, I'm not good at that. I just don't know how to talk to people in public, and he really never has. And she told him not to be too concerned, that there were a lot of good people, she called them friends, around the planet that would hear about him and be drawn to the information that could be helpful in those ways. A couple of times people from Billy's group also went out and gave talks, and I understand Billy tried it once or twice, but he was not received very well. I think it was just too difficult for someone that had had all the unusual experiences that he had had, contacting people in other worlds, seeing other worlds, traveling in other times, actually visiting, moving in time and visiting prehistoric times, medieval times, visiting Emmanuel at the time just before his crucifixion. These were all amazing things. Billy, thinking, of course, everybody would be fascinated to hear about it, comes out in public to give a small talk, and people really think he's kind of insane or crazy. Billy spent some time when he was younger in a mental hospital because he was incorrigible, and they thought he was really difficult to handle, and he was having problems. So he was always kind of concerned that people were going to think he was totally nuts, and that he would wind back up in a facility someplace. So this always was concern to him when Semjase would press him to go out into the public arena. Early on, too, in the contacts, the Pleiadians were making it clear to Billy that the purpose of his education was to get information out to the general public, speaking, putting out books and so forth, and letting the world know about this, because they were very adamant about the main part of their reason for coming was to try to educate us about the universe, about life, who we are, things that we would call philosophy or spirituality. And throughout all of the contexts, there's quite a bit of information about that. I have not interjected too much of that to this point, just a little of it, because it was kind of sporadic throughout the meetings whenever they would start talking about it. So again, like in the Talmud information, I've assembled that all in kind of one coherent straight through message and put it on the 2 tapes in your series called the Creation Tapes. Actually, one of them is called the Semyasi Spirit Lessons, which is Semyasi speaking on the philosophy of life based from a Plejaren point of view. Then there's the tapes marked Creation, and those have more of, I guess you'd call them the spiritual laws on them or something like that. But that's where most all that information is. Instead of just putting in little pieces of it here and there, I tried to put it all together in one coherent statement, so you can listen to those just on their own. Before she leaves, Billy has a couple more questions that he has to ask. He's concerned once again about other people claiming to have contacts with other entities and other life forms in other worlds. Excuse me. Semyasi again tells him that there are no other life forms living in our solar system, and that no one on Earth is having any contacts with other entities. As a matter of fact, she goes so far as to tell Billy that he is the only person on Earth having contacts with ETs. But in another part of the notes, they also suggest that about 3,000 ships a year come in, and occasionally ETs do have contacts with people, but maybe only for one time or so. So there seems to be some contradiction here, but I think what they're making reference to is the fact that Billy was the only one having ongoing contacts of his particular nature. And that's probably true. There doesn't seem to be any other cases on record so far of anyone having contacts the way that he has had. Billy is also at a point where he's getting kind of upset and frustrated because he's having a lot of problems at home, and he's trying to, do something about that. So she's trying to comfort him to keep going, and again she suggests that perhaps he could sell some crystals or something. And she hammers home again the fact that Billy is the first person in 2,000 years that has been able to be in contact with higher intelligence. That the Pleiadians for the past few weeks have been putting Billy in contact with a higher form of consciousness for his own spiritual growth, and also so he can put a book together on this particular subject. So even though things are getting kind of difficult for him, she's pushing him to hang in there and so forth and hang on. That if he gives up, this is the interesting part. She's saying, well, it's your decision if you want to go on. And Billy's saying, well, I've got to get a job or something because things are tough at home and I don't have any money. And she's saying things like, well, it's your decision, but of course if you have to get a job, then mankind will suffer. That if you have to get a job and we have to discontinue our contacts, then she's putting all this pressure on Billy that the development of Earth itself will suffer from this. And I know after, this is in 1975, and I know I didn't meet Billy till 86, I guess it was. And even then, in the summer of 87 and 88, when I was there, Billy had the same feeling that he had somehow let the Earth down, that he felt by the fact that the contacts had come to an end years earlier, that he somehow had failed the Earth. So there was all this pressure on him, even at this early time back in June of 75, that they were pressuring him to make him feel like the entire fate of the Earth was dependent upon his shoulders. And here's the poor little guy that's trying to do his best to understand all this information, write it down. He's got a wife at home and kids that need attention, need money, and need help, and he's not providing well as a father, and that makes him feel bad. So he's in a rather tough predicament here, and she's really not trying to help him out very much. She's suggesting that they would help as far as crystals and so forth, but she's leaning on him all the time and reminding him how valuable he is, how important he is, how evolved he is.